What if Nintendo did something different with Mario Sports in the Switch 2 generation? Of course, we know that with grim inevitability, a new console generation means another cycle of Mario Sports games, from the Famicom to the Wii U, and even including the Virtual Boy, a tennis game featuring Mario. More recently, simply Mario Tennis has been a staple of most consoles. Same with golf, and there are often a smattering of other sports titles along the way. But with Mario Tennis, Mario Golf, and Mario Strikers available backwards compatible through the Switch, it raises a few problems for Nintendo. Not only are these games already available, but Mario Tennis Aces in particular did pretty well. I'm sure it's possible to shuffle around some features and generate a new game that will reliably create a few million in sales, but is there a better way? Late in the Wii and 3DS's life, Nintendo tried something little different: the Sports Mix and Sports Superstars games, particularly drawing in more niche sports experiences, but these were still late in life titles. But what if Nintendo decided this time out to bypass the treadmill of individual sports and create one single, definitive Mario sports title for the ages right at the start of the Switch's life? Camelot had been quiet for a long time now, but this would make sense if they were working on both the tennis and the golf mechanics for such a game concurrently, probably teamed up with Bandai Namco on baseball, volleyball, and some smaller titles, and with next level games for strikers and perhaps even a few other sections. Of course, most sports games are relatively underfeatured, so putting them all together would surely mean a dearth of adventure modes. Not necessarily the case. Camelot still, according to their website, consider themselves RPG developers, and the chance to have a more expansive sports narrative drawing in multiple types of game and yet really showcasing the Mario universe to its fullest extent might well appeal. There's also a gap in the market opened up by Sega's loss of the Mario and Sonic at the Olympics license. Those games weren't massive hits, perhaps, but there was a niche for a lot of different sports-related activities with these key characters. I guess what I'm getting to is, what if they treated Mario Sports in the way they treat Mario Kart or Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, or indeed in the way they've treated Super Mario Party Jamboree, a far more huge and wide-ranging gaming proposition than we have been used to from the individual sports subseries. This has risks, of course. I was a huge fan of the indie classic Golf Story, but somehow the more wide-ranging sequel Sports Story seemed to lose a lot of the original's mojo. More pertinent to Nintendo, they are trading on the opportunity to have 3 or 4 different sports titles and to sell each one separately. Surely this would lead to a diminution of the sales they can get from this brand. Well, it depends. Mario Tennis Aces is reported to have sold over 4.5 million copies by the end of 2022. Mario Golf Super Rush had 2.48 million copies by the end of the same period, while in March 2023 it looked like 2.54 million people had picked up Mario Strikers Battle League. Tennis Aces was significantly higher in terms of sales than the others, but it was an early game, and also was one of the very few original titles on the system for the first 9 months of 2018. In a more competitive gaming space and without the shock of the new Switch effect, I'm not sure another Mario Tennis title would necessarily match these high numbers. But these numbers in themselves are quite derisory next to, say, the 21.1 million copies just the original Super Mario Party managed by the end of 2024, and that despite 2 sequel games coming in that period. However, there hasn't always been such a discrepancy between the sales of the Sports and the Party series. Mario Party 4 picked up 2 million sales on the GameCube, while Mario Power Tennis reportedly had 2.94 million. Older sales numbers are harder to reliably source than modern ones, but at least it seems that the franchises were roughly on par for a long time. But now, while the combined Mario sports titles on Switch have scooped around 10 million, the first Super Mario Party has double these sales, and Mario Party Superstars and Super Mario Party Jamboree probably represent by now nearly another 20 million on top. Basically, from Nintendo's point of view, Mario Sports could be selling a lot more. And it's not like for a long time now, most sports titles have been particularly high effort endeavours. Mario Strikers Battle League is in its own category of under-supported disappointment, but even Aces and Super Rush did the thing of releasing with certain amount of content and then backfilling that content later by making it a virtue of adding in elements which should have been in the game from day one. And I can get why this strategy was utilised. It's hard to overstate how difficult 2018 was for Nintendo, with the 3DS winding down, with them having to put all their chips on a major launch year for the Switch, and with them now essentially having to mark time until they could develop more games which would release starting in 2019. With a brief oasis in holiday 2018, it was essentially an 18-month game drought, punctuated only by the odd port. Doing individual sports and splitting up the content over several weeks made sense from this point of view. However, Nintendo doesn't have the same worry with Switch 2. Instead, they probably have an opportunity in the first couple of years to do one truly massive sports title, an evergreen that they hope will last the system's lifespan. And if they can get loads of people to it, and if it is as rich and fully featured as the tennis, golf, strikers, and baseball games should be, then it's possible that they can build some real hype and some real momentum behind the single title. People who have never played these games before would try them and hopefully enjoy them and come back for future efforts. But isn't there a ceiling still on what a Mario sports game could achieve? I would argue no, and I'd say look to Wii Sports and Switch Sports. The latter especially feels like quite a low effort title, but sells very well to a casual crowd. Here's the thing though, Wii Sports was designed to reach beyond the usual Nintendo audience, and so the Miis were a different kind of look to appeal to these people. It's hard to imagine the Wii being such a hit in care homes if it was Mario bobbing around. Nintendo were reaching out. But now Nintendo's strategy is in many ways the opposite. Sure, they want to reach out, but more importantly, they want to pull people in. Pull people into their franchises, into their systems, into their sensibility. And we know that this can be successful. Check out Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's rip-roaring sales track record. Not all of these will have been hardcore Mario fans. It's good if people are playing a Nintendo game, but it's great if the same people can be brought into a Mario game and getting acclimatized to Nintendo characters and Nintendo universes. It's not a big stretch from the Mario sports title's existing functionalities either. Aces and Super Rush already have motion control mechanics, and the latter also features Mii characters, so for Great Aunt Beryl, who really isn't sure what this Mario fellow is all about, why, she still has Miis available. And it doesn't stop Nintendo producing a Switch sports title of their own for a little later in the generation, when they're in their reaching out phase again and want to get people who perhaps still don't want to play a Mario-branded sports title. For now, though, a massive Mario sports game could get a lot of attention, and if they really push it, I think there is the chance to at least top 10 million sales, and perhaps even to get the momentum to become a true evergreen. So how likely is this really? My sense is that on balance, having lots of different Mario games releasing probably is of a greater value than just the sales they generate, and while Nintendo does have good numbers of Mario game brands, they don't have an infinite number, and without the regular sports games, they would lose a solid vein of the more arcadey casual party type titles. I don't think Nintendo would want Mario's output to be principally RPGs and the odd platformer. Moreover, it would kind of ruin Camelot's business model over the past few decades of bouncing from tennis to golf and back again, though frankly it would give the company the opportunity to do some other things again. Also, while tennis would normally be expected to come first in the sequence, if they decided to prioritize Mario Baseball and perhaps even a Mario Basketball game while Camelot shine their golden light elsewhere for a bit, then it could be 2028 or 2029 before we return to tennis. A decade on from the last game, and a chunk of the audience wouldn't even have been alive to see the previous release. I think a sports compilation title in itself feels like a 50% chance, given that the 3DS and Wii both got these late in life games to showcase some of the more obscure sports that Mario and his friends enjoy partaking in, but I think the chances of such a title that features tennis, golf, and baseball is probably more in the 30% realm. Let me know what you think. For now, though, thanks to everybody who likes, shares, comments, subscribes, and checks out the Patreon, and I shall look forward to seeing you again next time for another Nintendo Forecast.